What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about some pretty big news for both Square Enix and Xbox. And it's not just the Final Fantasy XIV news story, right? So that is the big thing. It was announced today, right? Final Fantasy XIV is coming in the spring to Xbox, but it's about basically this partnership or this reintroduction that Square Enix is okay with having their games released on Xbox platforms again. And obviously, we had a changing of the leadership at Square Enix, and they've talked about things like NFTs before. I mean, they've kind of gone pretty wacky, and hopefully those things don't massively, crater the company or anything. But this is pretty big news, I would honestly say, for both of them. We talk about the stories of Final Fantasy 16 leading in, and what would releasing on Xbox do for the thing? Would it help it sell in any way? Well, I'm sure it would help it sell a little bit, but what would that actual number be? You got Sony's whole relationship there, right? That Sony obviously feels very comfortable with swooping in and making things exclusive or timed exclusive for Square Enix. Now, that's not to say every game, right? You had Kingdom Hearts 3, what seems to be even Kingdom Hearts 4, those games were not on PlayStation exclusively. Kingdom Hearts 3 released on Xbox, right? But mainly the Final Fantasies of the world. We've had the Forspokens of the world, right? Obviously, Sony and Square Enix like each other and have been able or been willing to do these partnerships. So it's really a twofold thing. Number one, bringing Final Fantasy 14 to more people obviously is exciting. Me, myself, I haven't played the game. I actually have a friend of mine that has played the game, and he talks very, very highly of it. So more people there, the merrier. But then also that extra statement from both of them, not just Phil Spencer, but from Square Enix as well, that, hey, going forward, it's a relationship, it's a partnership. We're going to be bringing more games, more Square Enix games to Xbox going forward. So whether that means that the days of the Final Fantasy exclusivity thing is over, or whether we just start getting, because it could mean multiple things, right? It could mean you get Final Fantasy 16 after a year, or that the next game, Final Fantasy 17, is no longer exclusive even in a timed way, right? Or there was more than one way of reading that, right? Because like Final Fantasy 7, the remake and rebirth, like what happens there? What happens to Final Fantasy 16? Do we ever get a Forspoken situation? Does it happen on Xbox's side? See, really, the only thing even in this video that we've talked about is, do things almost become more even? Does this relationship between Xbox and Square Enix, it being okay again, or it being fine, does that make it even, or does that actually flip the scale to Xbox's side? Do you start to see, whether it's Final Fantasies of the world or Kingdom Hearts of the world or whatever, you start to see Xbox getting those things more exclusive, timed exclusive, versus Sony? It's going to be really interesting because, after the Activision Blizzard thing, I think a lot of people would assume that Sony would probably go after somebody, whoever that would be, and Square Enix makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I've said, and I want to say it actually in this video, I think it would work here. I've seen some people say, well, why would PlayStation, they already do these timed exclusives. They already have these working relationships with Square Enix. Why would they go in and buy them, use all that money when you really don't need to? And my answer has always been, I think it's even more powerful now, this is why Sony would do it. So we'll see if they end up doing it right in the future. This is exactly why, as a business, if you're Sony and if you are looking to do something because of the Activision Blizzard thing, right? Very specific examples here. If you're saying, okay, we need to make a splash, we need to start getting things under our wing, how Microsoft just did it, so we're going to go after Square Enix. And if you would say, well, why would they do that? They already have those third-party things. Well, what happens when Xbox or Microsoft, what happens when they swoop in and they start offering deals themselves, right? I mean, one thing we've heard about in the court cases is Sony doing these deals with companies, right? Whether it's limiting it, and Microsoft does it too, right? But these ideas that they go to these companies and they say, hey, we're going to give you so much money so that you don't put it on competing streaming services, or you make it exclusive, timed exclusive, you can't put it on the other console. Well, what happens when, for example, like Square Enix, where Sony kind of reigns supreme? What happens when Microsoft goes in and they start doing it? Maybe they offer more money than PlayStation, and then all of these kind of ties of, well, Japanese companies, maybe there's that synergy there, maybe they like get along better or want to work with each other more because of that. Well, at the end of the day, that might be the only thing left, right? Because if Microsoft goes in and just offers offers more money, it's kind of over. The only thing left is that, I guess, that integrity or whatever they may think in their own heads, right? So it's going to be really interesting from, the viewer standpoint. I mean, look, again, games in more places is not a bad thing whatsoever, but it's going to be interesting to see where the scale lands at the end of this. Is it just more even? And even by doing that, right, Sony would lose some of those exclusive, relationships or partnerships that they've been having over the last couple of years. So is that all that happens? Does Microsoft kind of get it, and do they do more exclusives with Final Fantasy games or Kingdom Hearts or whatever? Does somebody buy Square Enix? Does somebody get upset and say, you know what, we're not going to play it even, we're going to just outright buy them? It's going to be very interesting, because I think all these companies are going to get bought eventually, including Square Enix. I think totally does get bought by someone in the next, say, 5 or so years, maybe even less than that, right? It's just who will ultimately do it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you want to check out any of my other YouTube channels or our Twitter or our Discord, all the links are in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.